I'm Natalie, 32, and Christmas in our family has always been sacred. The traditions, the laughter, the togetherness, it was our cornerstone. So when my mother called last week and told me not to come to our family reunion this year, it felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. How do you process your own mother rejecting you during the season of togetherness? My large, close-knit family suddenly felt like strangers. This is the story of how I confronted the painful truth about conditional love and found unexpected strength. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to join me through this journey of heartbreak and healing. The Crawford family Christmas reunion was legendary in our hometown of Mapleton. For as long as I could remember, our house transformed into a winter wonderland every December. The scent of my mother, Catherine's cinnamon apple pie, would waft through the halls, mixing with the pine fragrance of our 12-foot tree that Dad always insisted was just the right size. The familiar melody of classic carols played on our antique record player, a family heirloom my grandfather had passed down. As a child, I'd wake up at dawn on Christmas morning, tiptoeing down our creaking staircase to see the presents arranged meticulously under the tree. My mother had a system color-coded wrapping paper for each family member. Mine was always silver with blue snowflakes. My sister Rebecca's was gold with red stars. My brother Michael's was green with white trees. It was one of many traditions that made our family feel special, organized, and different from others. Our traditions extended beyond gift-giving. Every Christmas Eve, we'd perform our family talent show. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins would gather in our living room, and each family member had to perform something, a song, a dance, a magic trick, a dramatic reading. My mother, Catherine, with her perfect pitch, always sang "O Holy Night" as the grand finale, bringing tears to everyone's eyes. My father, William, would accompany her on piano, his fingers dancing across the keys with surprising grace for a man who worked with his hands all year as the owner of Crawford Construction. Rebecca, my older sister by 4 years, embodied everything my parents valued. She followed the family blueprint, perfectly graduated with honors from our state university, married her college sweetheart James, who now works for my father, and lives 3 blocks from our parents with her 2 perfectly behaved children. Her talent show performances were always classical piano pieces that showcased her years of lessons. She now sits on the town council and chairs 3 community committees, just like our mother did at her age. Michael, 2 years younger than me, was the only son and therefore special by default. A former high school quarterback who now manages the family business's day-to-day operations, Michael could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. His natural charm and willingness to follow tradition made him the golden child, though we remained close despite our different paths. His Christmas talent was always something athletic, juggling, trick football tosses, or gymnastic feats that made the relatives gasp and applaud. Then there was me, the middle child, the questioner, the one who never quite fit the Crawford mold. While I loved our traditions, I also longed for something beyond Mapleton's boundaries. My talent show performances became increasingly problematic as I grew older. Interpretive dances, spoken word poetry about social justice, or songs I'd written that weren't exactly Christmas appropriate, according to Aunt Eleanor, my mother's sister and faithful echo chamber. Aunt Eleanor deserves special mention in my family's dynamics. Never married and living next door to my parents, she was less an aunt and more my mother's shadow and amplifier. Whatever opinion Catherine held, Eleanor magnified it tenfold. If my mother frowned at my outfit, Aunt Eleanor would make a cutting remark about my unfortunate fashion choices. If my mother was disappointed in my grades, Aunt Eleanor would remind everyone at dinner about how Rebecca had made the dean's list every semester. My cousin Sophia, Aunt Eleanor's niece from her brother's side, was once my closest ally in the family. 2 years older than me, she understood the pressure of living under the Crawford expectations. We'd hide in the attic during family gatherings as teenagers, sharing secrets and dreams of escape. But after college, Sophia gradually transformed, assimilating back into the family's expectations after a brief rebellious phase. Now married to a local doctor and active in the same community circles as my mother and sister, Sophia had completed her journey back to Crawford approval. My path diverged significantly 3 years ago when I made the decision that shook our family structure. After years working at a marketing firm that my father had helped me get into, I quit to pursue my passion for art. The arguments were explosive. My parents couldn't understand why I'd abandon a perfectly good career for something unreliable. But for the first time, I chose myself over their expectations. I moved to Boston, rented a small apartment with enough space for a modest studio, and threw myself into creating. It was terrifying and exhilarating. The first year was brutally difficult, waiting tables to pay rent while spending every free moment painting. The second year brought small successes, a few pieces sold at local art fairs, a feature in a neighborhood gallery. This past year had been my breakthrough, a solo exhibition at a respected gallery that garnered attention from critics and collectors alike. My art focused on identity, belonging, and transformation themes that clearly emerged from my own life experiences. Bold colors and unconventional materials became my trademark. I dyed my hair purple, then blue, then settled on a platinum blonde that made my mother wince during video calls. I adorned my arms with tattoos that told my story, each one meaningful to me but attention-seeking according to family comments. I'd missed last year's Christmas reunion due to my exhibition opening, which caused tension but seemed understood given the professional importance. My mother had been cold on the phone for months afterward, but I assumed time would heal the rift. This year, I'd planned to make it up to everyone. I'd booked my train ticket 2 months in advance, wrapped thoughtful gifts for each family member, and even prepared a special announcement about an upcoming exhibition in New York that I thought would finally make them proud. My apartment in Boston had transformed into a Christmas preparation station. Colorful paper, ribbons, and bows covered my living room floor as I carefully selected and wrapped each gift. For my father, a vintage book about architectural history. For Michael, concert tickets to his favorite band. For Rebecca and her family, personalized artwork for their home. For my mother, I'd created a special piece, a portrait of our family home in winter, capturing all the warmth and magic of those childhood Christmases. I'd been looking forward to reconnecting with everyone, sharing my successes, and perhaps finally finding that elusive balance between being myself and being a Crawford. I imagined Aunt Eleanor might still make her judgmental comments about my appearance, but surely my growing professional recognition would soften the criticism. I hoped Sophia might remember our old connection, even if she'd chosen a different path. Most of all, I fantasized that my parents might finally see that there were many valid ways to live a fulfilling life, that my different choices didn't equate to rejection of them or our family values. How naive I was. The evening my world shattered started ordinarily enough. Christmas music played softly from my speakers as I put the finishing touches on my mother's gift. My small apartment smelled of the gingerbread cookies I'd baked using Catherine's recipe, a peace offering of sorts, to show that I still valued our traditions even while forging my own path. Outside my window, Boston was transformed by gently falling snow, adding to the festive atmosphere. I was wrapping the final present, a hand-knitted scarf for Aunt Eleanor in her favorite shade of blue, an olive branch despite our differences, when my phone lit up with my mother's name. I smiled, assuming she was calling with last-minute details about the reunion. Perhaps asking what time my train would arrive so someone could pick me up from the station, or reminding me to bring my talent show contribution. "Hi, Mom," I answered cheerfully, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder as I tied a ribbon on the package. "Natalie," she replied, her voice unusually formal. There was no warmth, no honey or sweetheart that typically peppered her speech. "I need to talk to you about Christmas." Something in her tone made me set down the scissors. "Is everything okay? Did you change the schedule?" "Actually," she continued, her voice sounding rehearsed, "your father and I think it would be better if you didn't join us this year." The words hit me like physical blows. I sank onto my couch, ribbons still dangling from my fingers. "What? Mom, what are you talking about?" "This year is going to be different," she said, her voice taking on that clipped tone she used when discussing unpleasant topics. We're having some important guests, the Palmers, John Palmer from the bank and his family, and we just think it would be better to keep things simple." "Simple?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm your daughter. How is excluding me keeping things simple?" "Natalie, let's not be dramatic. There have been certain tensions in the family, and we're just trying to avoid any unnecessary drama during the holidays. You understand, don't you?" "No," I said, finding my voice. "I don't understand. What tensions? What drama? I haven't even been home in over a year." My mother sighed, that familiar sound of disappointment I'd heard throughout my childhood. "Your lifestyle choices have been difficult for the family to accept, Natalie. The hair, the tattoos, the alternative career path. It creates conversation that takes away from the spirit of the holiday." "My lifestyle choices?" I echoed in disbelief. "You mean my career as an artist? The career that's actually going really well? I was going to tell everyone about my New York exhibition." "Yes, well," she continued, unmoved, "perhaps you can visit after the holidays instead, when everyone else has gone home. It would give us a chance to catch up more intimately anyway." The implication was clear. I was an embarrassment. Something to be hidden away from important guests, acceptable only in private, away from judging eyes. The pain in my chest intensified. "So everyone else will be there? Rebecca, Michael, all the cousins? Just not me?" "Natalie, please try to understand. This is difficult for us too." "Is it?" My voice cracked. "Because it sounds like you're choosing appearances over your own daughter. Are you ashamed of me, Mom? Just say it if you are." "Now you're being childish," she said, her voice hardening. "This is exactly the kind of reaction we're trying to avoid at Christmas. Your father and I have made our decision. I'm sorry if it upsets you, but sometimes we have to make difficult choices for the good of the entire family." "The entire family except me, you mean?" I said, tears now streaming freely down my face. "I need to go, Natalie. Mrs. Hendricks is coming over to finalize the menu for Christmas dinner. We can talk more after the holidays." Before I could respond, she had ended the call. I sat in stunned silence, the partially wrapped present still in my lap, the cheerful Christmas music now a mocking soundtrack to my devastation. In a daze, I called Rebecca, hoping for some explanation, or perhaps even support. My sister answered after several rings, her voice hushed. "Natalie, can I call you back? I'm at Mom's helping with the Christmas planning." "Did you know?" I asked directly, my voice thick with tears. "Did you know Mom was going to tell me not to come home for Christmas?" A long pause followed. "Nat, it's complicated. So you did know. And you're okay with it? Your own sister being excluded?" "Look, it's not that simple," Rebecca whispered, clearly not wanting to be overheard. "Things have been tense since you missed last year. Mom was really hurt. And then there's everything with Aunt Eleanor and—" "What about Aunt Eleanor?" I interrupted. "I can't talk about this right now," she said quickly. "I'll call you tonight, I promise." But she didn't call that night, or the next day. My text messages to Michael went unanswered as well, the read receipts the only indication he'd seen them at all. That first night was the hardest. I sat among the cheerfully wrapped presents, symbols of a family reunion that would happen without me. The carefully selected gifts, the train ticket confirmation in my email, the new dress I'd bought to hopefully meet with my mother's approval, all painful reminders of my rejection. I moved through my apartment like a ghost, turning off the Christmas music, putting away the cookies I'd baked with such care. I cycled through emotions like flipping channels. Shock gave way to hurt. Hurt transformed into anger. Anger collapsed into a profound sadness that seemed to have no bottom. I scrolled through photos on my phone of past Christmases, smiling family pictures that now seemed like artifacts from a different life. Had those smiles been genuine? Had I always been the outsider and just failed to notice? Sleep evaded me entirely that first night. I kept replaying my mother's words, searching for some hidden meaning, some explanation that would hurt less than the obvious one that I was an embarrassment to my family, a blemish on their perfect image that needed to be concealed from important guests. By morning, one thing had become clear. Through the fog of pain, I needed answers. Real answers. not the sanitized version my mother had delivered in her practiced phone call. And for that, I would need to go home, invitation or not. The drive to Mapleton took 4 hours from Boston, every mile bringing both determination and dread. Winter scenery flashed by my windows, snow-dusted forests and small towns decorated for Christmas, but I barely registered the beauty. My mind raced with questions and imagined confrontations, rehearsing what I would say to my mother, my father, my siblings. By the time I passed the Welcome to Mapleton sign, my knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I didn't go to my family's home immediately. Instead, I texted Amanda Wilson, my best friend from high school, and one of the few people from my hometown I still kept in touch with. Unlike most Mapleton residents, Amanda had always supported my artistic pursuits and life choices, even if she had chosen to stay in our hometown herself, now running the local bookstore her parents had owned. In town unexpectedly. Coffee at Millie's in 30? I texted. Her response was immediate. Oh my God, yes. See you there. Millie's Cafe hadn't changed in the decades since I'd spent afternoons there as a teenager, sketching in notebooks while drinking too much caffeine. The same Christmas garland hung around the entrance. The same bell jingled as I pushed open the door. Amanda was already there, waving enthusiastically from a corner table. Her smile faltered slightly as I approached. Natalie, your hair looks amazing, but why didn't you tell me you were coming to town? I slid into the seat across from her, grateful for the relative privacy of the corner location. It was a last-minute decision. Actually, I wasn't supposed to come at all. Amanda's forehead wrinkled in confusion. What do you mean? You always come home for Christmas. Your mom talks about the family reunion for months beforehand. That statement hit me like a slap. Well, apparently this year I've been uninvited. What? That can't be right. I recounted my mother's phone call while Amanda listened, her expression shifting from confusion to shock, and then to something that looked uncomfortably like pity. Oh, Nat, she said when I finished. I'm so sorry. That's awful. But it doesn't make sense, I pressed. My mother mentioned tensions and drama, but I haven't even been home in a year. What could I possibly have done? Amanda's eyes darted away, focusing on her coffee cup. You really don't know what's been happening? Know what? She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. It's probably nothing. Town gossip. You know how Mapleton is. Amanda, I said firmly, please. I need to understand. She took a deep breath. There have been stories about you. Your life in Boston. What kind of stories? The kind Aunt Eleanor likes to tell at her weekly bridge club. About wild parties, questionable relationships, your bohemian lifestyle. She showed everyone photos from your gallery exhibition, the one with the body-painted models, and made it sound like some kind of scandalous event. My art exhibition had featured a series on body acceptance and transformation, with professional models and tasteful body paint. It was critically acclaimed and completely misrepresented by Eleanor's description. How would Aunt Eleanor even have those photos? Amanda winced. Sophia posted them, with captions about her avant-garde cousin and how some people will do anything for attention. People have been talking ever since. The betrayal hit me anew. Sophia, my former confidant, the cousin I'd shared secrets with, had publicly mocked my work. Let me see, I said. Amanda reluctantly pulled out her phone and navigated to Sophia's social media profile. There they were photos from my exhibition taken out of context, with captions loaded with innuendo. My cousin's art event. Guess some people never outgrow their rebellion phase. The comments beneath were worse relatives and family friends, expressing shock, disapproval, and pity for my parents. There's more, Amanda said quietly, scrolling to show me posts from other family members. Rebecca sharing an article about my exhibition with the comment, "Prayers for my sister to find her way." My own brother Michael responding to someone's question about me with, "We don't all choose the same path in life, unfortunately." Each post, each comment, was another wound. They hadn't just rejected me for Christmas, they'd been actively participating in a narrative that painted me as some kind of family embarrassment, a cautionary tale. I had no idea, I whispered. No one said anything to me directly. That's Mapleton for you, Amanda said sadly. Talk about people, not to them. After coffee, feeling numb, I drove through familiar streets now dressed in Christmas decorations. Without conscious decision, I found myself on Maple Avenue, where my parents' Victorian home stood proudly at the end of the cul-de-sac. Several cars already lined the driveway. I recognized Rebecca's SUV, Michael's sports car, and Aunt Eleanor's vintage Cadillac. I parked across the street, not quite ready to announce my presence. Through the large bay windows, I could see movement inside, figures moving around the living room, carrying decorations, laughing. Christmas preparations were clearly underway. I caught a glimpse of my mother directing someone, probably Rebecca, where to hang a garland. My father appeared briefly, carrying a box of ornaments. They looked happy, complete, as if the absence of their middle child created no void whatsoever. I sat there watching my family prepare for a Christmas I wasn't welcome to attend, a strange outsider to my own life. Through the window, I saw Sophia arrive with a platter of something, probably her famous Christmas cookies. She was greeted with hugs and exclamations. My mother took the platter with a warm smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The sun was setting by the time I pulled myself away from this masochistic surveillance, the Christmas lights on the house blinking on automatically. I drove to the only hotel in Mapleton, a small establishment usually catering to business travelers or visitors to the community college, one town over. The hotel room was impersonal and sterile, holiday decorations limited to a small artificial tree on the reception desk. I set my overnight bag down and sat on the edge of the bed, the reality of my situation finally, fully hitting me. I was in a hotel in my hometown, 3 miles from my family home, utterly alone for Christmas. I barely slept, my mind churning with everything I'd learned. By morning, a new emotion had pushed through the hurt determination. I deserved answers, not avoidance. I deserved to hear directly from my family why I had been excluded, not the sanitized version my mother had delivered or the town gossip Amanda had reluctantly shared. I showered and dressed with purpose, choosing an outfit that was both presentable and authentically me, black jeans, boots, and a deep blue sweater that brought out my eyes. I wore minimal makeup and pulled my platinum blonde hair into a neat ponytail. If I was going to confront my family, I wanted to look like myself, but not give them any superficial reasons to dismiss me. The Crawford family had a tradition of gathering at the house the day before Christmas Eve for what they called Preparation Day, a time when extended family would help decorate, bake, and prepare for the main events. I knew everyone would be there, and while it might create a scene, at least I would have the opportunity to address everyone at once. I arrived at the house just before noon. The driveway was even fuller than yesterday. Additional cars belonging to aunts, uncles, and cousins lined both the driveway and the street. Christmas music drifted from the open windows despite the cold, along with the sounds of laughter and conversation. This was the gathering I had been explicitly told not to attend. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering courage. Then I took a deep breath, grabbed the small gift bag containing my mother's present, the painting of our family home, and walked up the driveway. I had barely reached the halfway point when the front door opened. My father stepped out, clearly taking out trash bags, but froze when he saw me. The look on his face wasn't anger, as I might have expected, but something worse, panic. "Natalie," he said, quickly putting down the bags and hurrying toward me, his voice low. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk to you and Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady, "to understand what's really going on." My father glanced nervously back at the house. William Crawford had always been the quieter presence in our family, the peacekeeper who rarely contradicted my mother directly. Seeing him now gray-haired, more lines on his face than I remembered, his expression troubled, I felt a pang of sympathy, despite everything. "This isn't a good time," he said, placing a hand on my arm as if to physically stop my progress. "People are here, Natalie. Can't this wait until after the holidays, like your mother suggested?" "No, Dad, it can't. I drove 4 hours to understand why my own family has rejected me at Christmas. I think I deserve at least that much." His face crumpled slightly. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Your mother is under a lot of pressure with the Palmers coming. John could be a major investor in the business expansion, and you know how she gets about appearances. So I'm bad for appearances? The hurt in my voice was evident. That's not what he began, but was interrupted as the front door opened again. My mother stood there, her figure silhouetted against the warm light of the hallway behind her. Her face, when she saw me, transitioned rapidly from surprise to anger to a tight, controlled expression I knew all too well. "Natalie," she said, her voice carrying across the yard. "This is unexpected." She stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind her, as if to shield the gathering inside from the uncomfortable scene unfolding on the driveway. She was dressed impeccably as always, her silver-streaked dark hair perfectly styled, wearing the Christmas sweater that featured in every family photo for the past decade. "I thought I made myself clear on the phone," she continued, coming down the steps. "This isn't a good time." "When would be a good time to discuss why you've excluded your daughter from Christmas?" I asked, my voice rising slightly despite my efforts to stay calm. "After the holidays? Next year? Never?" "Lower your voice," she hissed, glancing toward the neighboring houses. "Mrs. Fitzgerald is probably watching from her window." "I don't care who's watching, Mom. I want to know why I'm suddenly not welcome in my own family home." "You know very well why." "Actually, I don't. I had to hear from Amanda about the rumors Aunt Eleanor's been spreading, about Sophia posting mockeries of my art exhibition." "Is that it? My career embarrasses you?" My mother's expression hardened. "Your career is your choice, Natalie. But when you create provocative displays and parade them publicly, it reflects on all of us. The Crawfords have a reputation in this town. Provocative? It was a critically acclaimed art exhibition. Have you even seen it yourself? Or are you just believing what Aunt Eleanor tells you?" As if summoned by her name, the front door opened again, and Aunt Eleanor appeared. At 65, she remained a formidable presence, tall, thin, with the same sharp features as my mother, but none of the occasional warmth. "I thought I heard your voice, Natalie," she said, descending the steps to join us in what was becoming an increasingly public confrontation. "How? Unexpected. Apparently everyone thinks so," I replied bitterly. "Well, when you made it clear that your art career was more important than family last Christmas, we assumed your priorities hadn't changed," Eleanor said with false sweetness. "I had a major exhibition opening. It was a professional obligation." "And we have social obligations," Eleanor countered smoothly. "The Palmers are expecting a traditional family Christmas, not a display." The way she said display made it clear she was referring to me. I noticed movement at the windows' faces peering out at the driveway drama. Among them, I caught sight of Rebecca, watching but making no move to come outside or support me. "So, I'm an embarrassment to be hidden away," I said, the pain in my chest almost unbearable now. "Because my life doesn't fit your narrow definition of acceptable." "Natalie, that's enough," my mother interjected. "You're making a scene, which is exactly what we were trying to avoid. Please respect our wishes. You can visit after the holidays." Like a dirty secret? No thank you. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out to see a text from Michael. "Stop making a scene. You're upsetting, Mom." I looked up from my phone to see more family members had come to the windows. Michael was visible now, too, standing behind Rebecca, both of them spectators to my humiliation. Then the front door opened once more, and Sophia stepped out. My heart clenched at the sight of her, once my closest ally, now apparently my most public critic. "Natalie," she said, approaching with what appeared to be sympathy but felt calculated, "maybe we should talk privately? This isn't the way to resolve family differences." "Family differences?" I echoed. "Is that what you call publicly mocking my art exhibition? Posting out of context photos to make me look bad?" Sophia's sympathetic expression faltered. "I was just sharing my experience. If you took it the wrong way—" "There's no wrong way to take what you did," I interrupted. "You betrayed me, Sophia. You know how much my art means to me." "Your art," my mother interjected, "is exactly the problem. Naked people covered in paint? What did you expect people to think?" "I expected my family to at least ask me about my work before condemning it," I said, my voice breaking slightly. I expected support, or at the very least, the benefit of the doubt. Support goes both ways, my father said quietly, speaking up for the first time in several minutes. You haven't exactly been present in family matters, Natalie. I stared at him in disbelief. I call every week. I send birthday cards, anniversary gifts. I try to stay connected despite living in Boston. It's not the same as being here, my mother said firmly. Rebecca and Michael are involved in the community. They're building lives here, continuing the Crawford legacy. You chose to leave. The unfairness of it all hit me like a physical blow. I had been judged and found wanting for the crime of pursuing my own path. More cars were pulling into the driveway, now cousins arriving for preparation day, witnessing my rejection in real time. Some had the decency to look uncomfortable, others watched with undisguised curiosity. Maybe you should go, Natalie, my mother said, not unkindly but with finality. This isn't helpful for anyone. Or what? You'll call the police on your own daughter? The words escaped before I could stop them. My mother's expression turned to ice. If that's what it takes to preserve the peace of this gathering, yes. The statement hung in the cold air between us. I looked from my mother to my father, hoping he might contradict her. But he remained silent, eyes downcast. I glanced up at the windows where my siblings still watched, neither making any move to intervene or support me. Without another word, I turned and walked back to my car, the gift bag with my mother's painting still clutched in my hand. I felt dozens of eyes on me, family members, neighbors, curious onlookers drawn by the unusual scene on the Crawfords' normally perfect driveway. I slid into my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely insert the key. As I pulled away from the curb, I caught a final glimpse of my family in the rearview mirror, my parents still standing in the driveway, Eleanor saying something to my mother, Sophia retreating to the house. None of them looked after my departing car. In the privacy of my vehicle, I finally allowed the tears to fall freely. I'd come seeking answers and connection. Instead, I'd been rejected more thoroughly and publicly than I could have imagined. Christmas Eve found me alone in my hotel room, surrounded by the gifts I'd so carefully selected and wrapped. The television played holiday movies on mute, cheerful families celebrating together, resolving their differences in time for Christmas morning. The irony wasn't lost on me. Outside, Mapleton was transformed into a winter wonderland. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, covering everything in pristine white. Through my window, I could see families walking together toward the town's annual Christmas Eve celebration in the square. Children bundled in colorful coats, parents carrying containers of hot chocolate, teenagers laughing together, the normal rhythms of holiday life continuing without me. I hadn't left the hotel room since returning from the confrontation yesterday. Room service had delivered dinner last night and breakfast this morning, the servers giving me sympathetic looks that suggested news of the Crawford family drama had already circulated through town. In Mapleton, gossip traveled faster than light. My phone had remained mostly silent. A few concerned texts from Amanda, asking if I was okay. Nothing from my family, not my parents, not my siblings, not my cousins. The silence was its own form of rejection, perhaps the most painful yet. Against my better judgment, I opened social media. I'd been avoiding it, knowing it would only hurt more, but some masochistic impulse drove me to look now. My feed was immediately filled with posts from my family Crawford Christmas preparations in full swing. There was Rebecca, posting photos of her children hanging ornaments on my parents' tree. Creating memories with the next generation of Crawfords, number family tradition, number Christmas Eve. Michael had shared a group photo taken in front of the fireplace, my parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all wearing matching Christmas sweaters. Annual Crawford Christmas photo. Blessed to have such an amazing family. Number, Christmas blessings. And then, most painful of all, a post from my cousin Sophia. So grateful for drama-free holidays this year. Nothing better than authentic family time with people who share your values. Number, counting my blessings. No one mentioned my absence. There was no empty space in the family photo where I should have been. No acknowledgement that a member of the family was missing. They had simply closed ranks and continued as if I had never existed. I scrolled through dozens of comments under these posts, friends and neighbors offering holiday wishes, complimenting the decorations, praising what a wonderful family the Crawfords were. The perfect family narrative remained intact, uninterrupted by my inconvenient existence. My phone began ringing, not family, but friends from Boston who had seen the Crawfords' social media posts and noticed my absence. "Nat, what's going on?" asked my roommate from art school. "Aren't you supposed to be home for Christmas?" "Are you okay?" texted my gallery owner friend. "Call me if you need to talk." Each concerned message underscored the contrast my chosen family in Boston noticing my absence immediately, while my blood relations carried on without missing a beat. As evening fell, I hit rock bottom. Sitting cross-legged on the hotel bed, I spread out old family photos I'd brought with me Christmas mornings from childhood, family vacations, graduation ceremonies. In every image, I searched our faces for signs. I might have missed indications that I had always been the outsider, that my place in the family had always been conditional. Memories flooded back, now viewed through a new, painful lens. The time I'd chosen to attend an art camp instead of the family reunion at the lake, and my mother had barely spoken to me for weeks after. The prom, when I'd worn a vintage dress instead of the traditional gown my mother had selected, and Aunt Eleanor had commented loudly about attention-seeking behavior. My college graduation, when my parents had seemed more concerned about what their friends would think of my blue-streaked hair than about my summa cum laude honors. The pattern was undeniable now. Love and acceptance in my family had always been conditional, always dependent on conformity. I'd been fighting against it my entire life without fully recognizing the battle. In a moment of desperate weakness, I found myself considering what it would take to win back my family's approval. I could dye my hair back to its natural brown. I could dress more conventionally when visiting Mapleton. I could talk less about my art career and more about respectable aspects of my life. I could become the daughter they wanted, at least on the surface, at least when I was home. The thought sent a wave of nausea through me. Would I really consider erasing myself, diminishing my identity and passions, to earn a place at a Christmas table? Would that even work? Or would the conditional nature of their acceptance always mean I was one mistake away from rejection? I caught sight of myself in the hotel mirror, eyes red from crying, platinum hair disheveled, the small tattoo of a paintbrush visible on my wrist. Beyond my reflection, I could see one of my paintings propped against the wall, a piece I'd brought to show my family, a complex exploration of identity and belonging that had received critical acclaim in Boston. The dichotomy was stark. On one side, the authentic self I had fought to become an artist, gaining recognition for work that spoke truth about human experience. On the other, the diminished version of myself I would have to adopt to meet Crawford family standards, a pale imitation, concerned primarily with appearances and conformity. In that moment of clarity, painful though it was, I recognized that my family's rejection wasn't a reflection of my worth, but of their limitations. Their inability to accept difference, to embrace authenticity, to love unconditionally, these were their failings, not mine. This realization didn't immediately ease the pain. In fact, it brought fresh grief mourning the family I had thought I had, the unconditional love I had believed existed beneath the surface tensions. But within the grief was the first seed of something else. Liberation. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, sunlight reflecting blindingly off fresh snow. I had finally fallen asleep around 4 a.m., exhausted from emotional overload, and was awakened by an insistent knocking at my hotel room door. Disoriented and still wearing yesterday's clothes, I stumbled to the door, expecting housekeeping despite the Do Not Disturb sign. Instead, I found Amanda standing there, carrying a large paper bag that smelled tantalizingly of coffee and baked goods. Behind her stood three other faces I recognized: Tyler from my high school art class, now a graphic designer, Jade, who had played in the school band with me, and Marcus, who had been in my AP English class and now taught at the high school. "Merry Christmas, Nat," Amanda said gently. "We thought you could use some company." I stared at them in confusion. "How did you know I was here?" "Small town," Marcus said with a shrug. The hotel manager is my cousin. Word gets around when a Crawford checks in instead of staying at the family mansion. Plus, I might have put out some feelers when you didn't respond to my texts, Amanda admitted. We figured no one should be alone on Christmas morning. To my embarrassment, I burst into tears. The simple kindness of their presence after days of rejection broke through my carefully constructed walls. They filed into the room, surrounding me with hugs and understanding, no judgment on their faces for my emotional display. "We brought breakfast," Jade said, taking containers out of the bag Amanda had carried. "Pancakes, bacon, fruit, the works. And real coffee, not that hotel room stuff," Tyler added, handing me a large cup from the local coffee shop. As we spread the impromptu breakfast on the small hotel table, I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced since arriving in Mapleton. These people, friends from my past who had no obligation to me, had chosen to spend part of their Christmas morning making sure I wasn't alone. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, taking a sip of the perfectly prepared coffee. "This means more than you know." "We've all seen the social media posts," Marcus said directly, "and heard the gossip. It's not right, what they're doing." "The Crawford family Christmas is legendary in this town," Amanda added, "but that doesn't make their behavior okay." "We thought you should know that not everyone in Mapleton thinks like your family," Jade said. "Some of us actually appreciate people who follow their passions and live authentically." Their support was like a balm on my raw emotions. For the first time since my mother's phone call, I felt seen and valued. Not despite my differences, but because of them. As we finished eating, my phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar local number. I almost declined it, fearing more family drama, but something made me answer. "Is this Natalie Crawford?" asked a deep male voice I vaguely recognized. "Yes, it is." "Natalie, it's your Uncle James, William's brother." Uncle James was something of a family ghost, my father's younger brother who had been estranged from the Crawfords for over 15 years. As children, we had been told he moved to Colorado after making poor life choices, a vague explanation that had always intrigued me. He hadn't attended a family gathering since I was a teenager. "Uncle James? How did you get my number?" "Amanda Wilson reached out to me. I still have connections in town, though your mother would hate to know that." I glanced at Amanda, who smiled sheepishly. "I thought he might understand what you're going through," she whispered. "I hear you've been officially uninvited from the Crawford Christmas extravaganza," Uncle James continued. "Welcome to the club. I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner with my family today. Nothing fancy, but certainly drama-free." The invitation, so unexpected and genuine, brought fresh tears to my eyes. I'd like that very much," I managed to say. "Great. We're at 247 Pine Street. Come by around 2. And Natalie, bring your authentic self. That's the only dress code we have." After my friends left, promising to check in later, I showered and changed, taking care with my appearance not out of anxiety but self-respect. I wrapped one of my smaller paintings as a gift for Uncle James and his family, then drove to the address he had provided. Pine Street was in a modest neighborhood across town from the Crawford family home, small houses with simple decorations, far from the elaborate displays on Maple Avenue. Number 247 was a cozy craftsman bungalow with multicolored lights strung along the eaves and a wreath made of repurposed materials on the front door. Uncle James opened the door before I could knock. At 58, he looked remarkably like my father, but with more laugh lines and less tension in his shoulders. His hair was completely gray, worn longer than my father would ever consider appropriate, and he sported a short beard. "Natalie," he said warmly, pulling me into a hug that felt like coming home. "It's been too long." Inside, I was introduced to Uncle James's family, his wife Maria, a vibrant woman with a quick laugh who taught music at the community college, their daughter Eliza, close to my age and working as an environmental scientist, and their son Diego, a college student home for the holidays. The house was warm and inviting, decorated eclectically with handmade ornaments and meaningful mementos rather than the color-coordinated perfection of the Crawford home. Over a delicious dinner, nothing like my mother's formal Christmas feast, but somehow more satisfying, Uncle James shared his own story of Crawford family rejection, how he had been essentially excommunicated for marrying Maria, a woman my grandparents and Catherine had deemed unsuitable because of her Mexican heritage and career as a musician. Your grandmother actually told me I was lowering the family standard, James recalled without bitterness. And your mother said I was being selfish for not considering how my choice would affect the family's standing in the community. That sounds familiar, I said softly. The Crawfords have always valued appearance over authenticity, James continued. It took me years to recognize that their rejection was liberating, not devastating. Once I stopped seeking their approval, I could build a life based on love rather than conformity. His family nodded in agreement, each sharing how they had created their own traditions, their own definition of family that valued individual expression and unconditional acceptance. But didn't you miss them? I asked, the question that had been haunting me. Didn't it hurt to be cut off? Every day at first, he admitted. Family ties run deep. But over time, I realized I was missing an illusion. The family I wished we were, not the family we actually were. And I was gaining something far more precious, a life of authenticity. As the evening progressed, I felt a weight lifting. Here was living proof that there was life happy, fulfilling life after Crawford family rejection. James had not only survived, he had thrived, creating a family based on the very values the Crawfords claimed to uphold, but failed to practice love, acceptance, support. The conversation was interrupted by my phone buzzing with a text message. I was surprised to see Michael's name on the screen. Where are you staying? Can we meet? Just us. I showed the message to Uncle James, who raised an eyebrow. Up to you, he said. But remember, you don't owe anyone a response who didn't support you when it counted. After consideration, I decided to reply. At the Mapleton Inn. I'm having Christmas dinner with Uncle James and his family. Michael's response came quickly. Uncle James? Mom will flip. Can I come by your hotel later? I need to talk to you. There was a time when I would have immediately agreed, eager for any connection to my immediate family. But something had shifted in me. Why now, Michael? You watched from the window when they rejected me on the driveway. It's complicated, Nat. I'm sorry. Please. 8 p.m.? After discussing it with Uncle James and his family, who offered supportive perspectives without telling me what to do, I agreed to meet Michael later. But first, I would enjoy this unexpected gift, a Christmas surrounded by family who accepted me exactly as I was. As I helped Eliza and Diego clean up after dinner, my phone buzzed with more messages, friends from Boston checking in, Amanda asking how things were going with Uncle James, and, most surprisingly, a lengthy text from Michael. I'm sorry for not standing up for you. I've been trapped in the Crawford expectations too, just in different ways. The perfect son, the business successor, the town golden boy. Sometimes I look at you living your life in Boston, and I'm jealous of your freedom. We should talk about a lot of things. For the first time since arriving in Mapleton, I felt a flicker of hope, not that my entire family would suddenly change, but that perhaps authentic connections were possible with those willing to see beyond the Crawford facade. The day after Christmas dawned with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since arriving in Mapleton. My meeting with Michael the previous evening had been revealing in ways I hadn't anticipated. He had arrived at my hotel looking uncharacteristically disheveled, the perfect Crawford son showing cracks in his carefully maintained facade. I've been a coward, were his first words when I opened the door. I should have said something when Mom and Dad told you not to come. I should have stood up for you on the driveway. We had talked for hours, really talked, perhaps for the first time as adults. Michael confessed feeling trapped in the role assigned to him, the dutiful son who would take over the family business, marry appropriately, and maintain the Crawford legacy. He admitted envying my courage to pursue my own path, even as our parents had taught him to disapprove of my choices. Do you know why I never leave Mapleton? He had asked. It's not because I love it here. It's because I'm terrified of disappointing them. At least you're free, Nat. I'm still trying to earn their approval every day, and it's exhausting. His vulnerability had shifted something in me, transforming my hurt into determination. The problem wasn't just how the Crawfords had treated me. It was the entire system of conditional love and appearance-based value that had damaged all of us in different ways. Now, sitting at the small desk in my hotel room, I began to write. Not just any writing specific, honest letters to each member of my family, expressing my feelings without apology or diminishment. To my mother, I wrote about the pain of being valued for appearance rather than substance, and how her conditional acceptance had taught me to doubt my worthiness. To my father, I expressed disappointment in his passive enabling of toxic family dynamics, even when he knew better. To Rebecca, I acknowledged the pressure she felt to be perfect and how it had driven a wedge between us as sisters. To Sophia, I wrote of the special bond we once shared and my hurt at her public betrayal. These weren't angry rants or accusations, but honest expressions of my experience and feelings, my truth laid bare, without expectation of response or resolution. The act of writing them was cathartic, a reclaiming of my narrative from the distorted version that had been created about me. As I sealed the final envelope, my phone rang. It was Eliza, Uncle James's daughter, calling to invite me to their home again. "Dad thought you might like to see some old family photos he saved," she said. "Plus, Diego and I are planning to hit the art supply store in Westfield, and we thought you might want to come along." The invitation sparked an idea. "Actually," I replied, "I've been thinking about creating an art piece about family, rejection, and belonging. Would your dad mind if I set up a small workspace in your guest room? I'd pay rent, of course." "Are you kidding?" He'd be thrilled. Mom, too. They were just saying how much they enjoyed having another artist in the family. Another artist in the family. The phrase warmed something in me that had been cold for too long. Within hours, I had checked out of the hotel and moved my belongings to Uncle James's guest room, which Maria had enthusiastically offered to convert into a temporary studio space. James helped me push the furniture against the walls and set up an easel near the window with the best natural light. While organizing my supplies, I received a text from my gallery owner friend in Boston, responding to updates I'd shared about the family situation. "This is powerful material, Nat. Have you considered channeling it into your work? Your identity series was brilliant, but this adds another dimension. Let's talk about featuring whatever emerges in the spring exhibition." The professional validation added fuel to my creative fire. I began sketching immediately concepts for a series exploring family dynamics, conditional love, rejection, and the discovery of authentic connection. The work would be personal but universal, touching on experiences many could relate to while remaining true to my specific journey. The creative process absorbed me completely. I worked through the evening and into the night, stopping only when Maria gently insisted I eat something. The family moved around me respectfully, occasionally offering encouragement or asking thoughtful questions about my process, but mostly giving me the space to transform my pain into purpose. The next morning, after a few hours of sleep, I drove to the local post office and mailed the letters I had written to my family members. Whether they read them or not was beyond my control, but the act of sending them was significant. I was speaking my truth without seeking permission or approval. Afterward, I took a deliberate drive through town, visiting places that had shaped my childhood: the elementary school, where I'd first discovered my love for art; the public library, where I'd hidden away reading books my mother deemed unnecessary; the park where I'd sketched for hours, while other kids played organized sports. I reclaimed these spaces as part of my story, separate from the Crawford family narrative. As I drove past the neighborhood coffee shop, I noticed Mrs. Henderson, our longtime neighbor, sitting by the window. On impulse, I parked and went inside. "Natalie Crawford!" she exclaimed when she saw me. "What a surprise! I thought you couldn't make it home for Christmas this year." The comment caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "Your mother told everyone you were too busy with your art career to come home," she explained, looking confused. "She mentioned it at church, and again when I saw her decorating the house, said you had an important exhibition or something." The realization that my mother had been actively lying about my absence rather than admitting she had disinvited me was both painful and oddly liberating. The Crawford image management ran even deeper than I had imagined. "Actually, Mrs. Henderson," I said carefully, "I did come home. My mother asked me not to attend the family Christmas." Her eyes widened. "Oh, I had no idea. That doesn't sound like Catherine." "It doesn't sound like the Catherine Crawford that people in town know," I agreed. But families are complicated. As I left the coffee shop, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Mom found out you're staying with Uncle James. Major meltdown happening. I told her it was her own fault for excluding you. First time I've ever stood up to her. Feels terrifying and amazing. A mix of emotions swept through me: concern for Michael, satisfaction that my mother was facing consequences for her actions, and pride that my brother had found his voice. I texted back, "Proud of you. Want to meet for coffee tomorrow? Bring Rebecca if she's interested." His response came quickly. "She is. Says she needs to apologize in person." Back at Uncle James's house, I returned to my artwork with renewed energy and clarity. The piece was evolving into something more nuanced than simple anger or hurt. It contained those elements, but also understanding, forgiveness, and hope. The Crawford family portrait was being reframed, literally and figuratively, into something more honest and ultimately more beautiful in its authenticity. That evening, as I cleaned my brushes, Uncle James knocked on the doorframe of my makeshift studio. "How's it coming?" he asked. I gestured to the canvas. "It's evolving. I'm finding there's more to say than I initially thought." He nodded thoughtfully. "That's how it goes with family stories. They're never simple." "I've been wondering," I said, setting down the brush I'd been cleaning. "Do you ever regret it? The rupture with the family?" Uncle James considered the question seriously. "I regret that it had to happen. I regret that my parents died without ever meeting their grandchildren. I regret that William and I lost years we could have been brothers." He paused. "But I don't regret choosing love and authenticity, even at that cost. Some prices are worth paying." As he turned to leave, he added, "By the way, I'm having the annual New Year's bonfire in the backyard. Nothing fancy, just friends, food, and burning away the old year to welcome the new. You're welcome to invite anyone you'd like." The invitation triggered an idea, a way to symbolically leave behind the gifts I'd brought for a family gathering that didn't want me, while creating something new and meaningful. I decided to set aside one more day for my Mapleton visit before returning to Boston, sensing that something important remained to be resolved. 6 months after that painful Christmas, I stood in the center of the Westfield Gallery, surrounded by the fruits of my heartbreak and healing. Family Lines. Reflections on Belonging. Read the exhibition title on the wall, my name prominently displayed beneath it. The collection represented the most personal work I'd ever created, 11 pieces exploring family dynamics, rejection, conditional love, and the journey toward authentic connection. The centerpiece was a large canvas titled Driveway Confrontation, depicting the painful scene outside my parents' house, but transformed through artistic interpretation into something universally relatable, rather than merely autobiographical. What made this opening night particularly surreal was the mix of attendees. My Boston art community was well represented: gallery owners, fellow artists, critics, and friends who had supported my journey. But there were also faces I hadn't expected to see: Rebecca, looking uncomfortable but determined in the unfamiliar environment; Michael, who had visited me twice in Boston since Christmas; Uncle James and his entire family; Amanda and my other Mapleton supporters; and most surprisingly, standing awkwardly near the entrance, my father. William Crawford looked out of place in his conservative suit among the more eclectic gallery crowd, but the fact that he had come at all represented a seismic shift. My mother was noticeably absent, as were Aunt Eleanor and many other family members. But one person was enough: a crack in the wall of family rejection that had seemed impenetrable 6 months ago. Rebecca approached me as I finished speaking with a critic who had given the exhibition a glowing advance review. "This is amazing, Natalie," she said, gesturing around the gallery. "I had no idea. I mean, I knew you were an artist, but I never really understood what that meant." There was genuine admiration in her voice, along with regret. In the months since Christmas, we had cautiously rebuilt communication through occasional phone calls and text messages. This was her first time seeing my professional world firsthand. "Thank you for coming," I replied sincerely. "It means a lot." "I need to apologize properly," she said, her voice dropping. "What happened at Christmas was wrong. I knew it was wrong when Mom first suggested not including you, but I didn't say anything." I was afraid of becoming the next target. I understand fear, I told her. It's taken me years to break free of it, the fear of disappointing people, of not being Crawford enough. But Rebecca, it's worth it. The freedom on the other side is worth it. I'm starting to see that, she admitted. Michael has changed so much since standing up to Mom. He seems lighter somehow. I want that too. Our conversation was interrupted by my father approaching hesitantly. Up close, I could see new lines on his face, a weariness that hadn't been there at Christmas. Natalie, he said formally, then seemed at a loss for words. I'm glad you came, Dad, I offered, breaking the awkward silence. He looked around at the artwork, his expression a complex mix of confusion and pride. Your mother doesn't know I'm here, he admitted. But after reading your letter, I needed to see for myself. To understand. The letter I'd written the day after Christmas had been honest about the pain his passive enabling had caused, but also acknowledging the pressure he himself must have felt within the Crawford family system. What do you think? I asked, gesturing to the exhibition. I don't understand all of it, he said truthfully. But I can see that you're very good at what you do. These people, he gestured to the critics and gallery owners engaged in animated discussions about my work. They respect you. I should have respected your choices too. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a beginning, an acknowledgement that perhaps there were many valid ways to live a fulfilling life, not just the narrow, Crawford-approved path. The exhibition represented a professional triumph. All but one piece sold that night, and 3 major galleries expressed interest in featuring my work in upcoming shows. But the personal significance ran deeper. I had transformed pain into purpose, rejection into creation, exclusion into connection. Uncle James approached as the crowd began to thin, clapping a hand on my father's shoulder in a gesture that seemed both familiar and long estranged. Good to see you here, William, he said simply. James. My father nodded, looking uncomfortable, but not hostile. Your daughter Eliza was telling me about her environmental research. Impressive work, the next generation finding their own paths, James replied meaningfully. As it should be. Later that evening, as the gallery staff began closing up, I found myself standing with Uncle James, Michael, Rebecca, and my father, a small, tentative family gathering so different from the orchestrated perfection of Crawford Christmas reunions. I've decided to launch a community art program in Mapleton, I announced. Weekly workshops at the community center for anyone interested in exploring creativity. I'll come back 1 weekend a month to lead them. Mom will hate that, Michael said with a small smile. Which means you should definitely do it. It's not about Mom anymore, I replied. It's about creating something positive from this experience, about offering others what I had to find elsewhere permission to be authentically themselves. Rebecca surprised me by saying, I'd like to help. I don't know anything about art, but I'm good at organization. And I think it would be good for me to be involved in something that's just about joy and expression, not appearances. As the evening ended, I didn't know exactly what the future held for my relationship with various family members. My mother might never accept my choices or acknowledge the harm her conditional love had caused. Aunt Eleanor would likely continue spreading distorted versions of my life. Some relatives would remain distant, uncomfortable with anyone who challenged the Crawford narrative. But standing in that gallery surrounded by work born from pain yet transcending it, I understood that family, true family, wasn't defined by DNA or tradition or conformity. It was created through acceptance, support, and the courage to see each other as we truly are. The Christmas rejection that had seemed so devastating had ultimately been liberating, pushing me to discover connections based on authenticity rather than obligation, to create art that spoke truth rather than maintaining appearances, to build holiday traditions centered on joy rather than performance. As Uncle James had said on that pivotal Christmas day, some prices are worth paying. The cost of authenticity was high, but the reward, a life built on genuine connection and creative truth, was immeasurable. I looked around at the small gathering, my unconventional family constellation, and felt something I hadn't experienced in the Crawford home for many years: peace. Not the artificial peace of suppressed differences and enforced conformity, but the genuine peace that comes from being fully seen, honestly known, and loved anyway. What's your experience with family acceptance? Have you ever had to choose between authenticity and belonging? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in navigating complicated family dynamics. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, the family that truly matters is the one that loves you exactly as you are.